Welcome to the Counterweight podcast. I am Doug Rogers, Chief Revenue Officer and Managing Partner for Waypoint Healthcare Solutions. And I'm joined weekly by my co-host, James Canary, founder and owner of the Upper Right Corner. Together, we are focused on speaking to and learning from growth leaders across the healthcare space about their journeys and lessons learned. James and I want to explore how growth leaders manage this tension not only for their teams, but also with their leaders and in many cases, board members and investors. We will discuss with our guests the career journey they have been on, key influences that help them put them into the position they are today. We will talk about successes and challenges, what they learned from these events for themselves and for their teams. Join us each week for a new episode with our guest. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn under the name The Counterweight Podcast. Subscribe, like, follow, and give us feedback as we go along. Now on to the show. Hello, my name is Doug Rogers, and welcome to an episode in 2025 of The Counterweight. We are building for 2025 with our usual programming, but we couldn't help but take advantage of all of the activity that has started the year in healthcare, digital healthcare, and especially seeing a friend of the pod, McAllister, and the great work that he's doing. And we just wanted to take a moment and get some perspective on one of the biggest conferences, or at least the most talked about conferences, first part of the year, which is JPM Healthcare. So we're going to dive right in. But before I do that, let me introduce Kyle. He is one of three co-founders for a company called Triley. And Kyle's going to do a much better job than I of explaining what that is. So Kyle, why don't you just give a quick introduction? And then we're going to talk about your experiences at JPM.
Yeah, that sounds great. Really quick on myself. My background's in the electronic health record world, worked for Epic and Cerner, did a bunch of consulting with health systems on their data, and eventually got into the clinical trials world, which will become relevant actually on the JPM front too, just because it's so different than other healthcare conferences. Yeah, that all led me into Triley, started with my two co-founders, Trevor Welch and Ramon Prieto. We're fairly early stage, just building it for about 2 years now.
Oh, wow.
We're a clinical trials tech platform. Happy to give way more details there, but really starting with helping clinical trial sites recruit patients from out of their own electronic health records.
Wow. Sounds like a really, really cool, not just idea, but company that y'all are building. You know, for our audience though, by the way, I just want to, I want to give a shout out. Kyle is a bit of a unicorn for two reasons. One, he is one of, I think, only two people I know that have worked at both Epic and Cerner. I don't know how you swung that. It feels like that is a bridge too far for Epic, but super, super awesome. Kyle is not the only co-founder in his house. So his wife is also a co-founder and doing some amazing work. And I can only imagine what conversations at the dinner table are like in that environment. Super, super special to have Kyle on the pod today. So let's talk about JPM. So I'll raise my hand. I've never been. I read about it, I hear about it, and I'm super interested to get your experience, but just a couple of things that I've seen come out of this conference. So one, if you're not familiar in the audience, JPM, this is the JP Morgan Healthcare Conference. They host it in San Francisco. It's been going in some form or fashion since 1983. Fun fact, and I think Kyle, you can verify this, to actually go to the conference, you have to be invited, and that invite list is about 8,000 people. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. You got to be elite to get into that.
That's right. And not to say that Kyle's not elite. There's a lot of elite qualities, but right there's a stratosphere that people are playing in to actually be in the conference. My understanding though is I've actually seen headlines to this effect. About 90% of the activity actually happens outside the conference, coffee shops, bars, restaurants, what have you. And most of that activity are people who are not there invited to the conference, but are coming to be in proximity to the conference. And I guess that was probably your experience, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, we weren't invited. We weren't in that, mega stratosphere, but yeah, it makes for a really interesting experience because it almost feels like everybody, even though it's 90% of the people that are like there for the conference, it almost feels like you are the other, like you're almost
Yeah.
on another team and you're kind of like, you're finding these other ways to get together. But no, there's a huge culture built around events outside of the space, even, especially in the evening, happy hours, dinners, etc. But then also during the day, there's all kinds of programming through, I attended events through Silicon Valley Bank and through others that were totally disconnected. You didn't have to have a conference ticket to get in. Um, yeah, actually made for a pretty cool environment. I'm so used to the health and HIMSS and other side of the
Yeah.
world where everything centers around that conference, the show floor for the conference. And it's kind of nice. Yeah. Meeting at great coffee shops with like world-class San Francisco coffee and baked goods was not a bad place.
I love the locale. I'm a huge fan of San Francisco for a variety of reasons. And I mean, Kyle, I can appreciate the energy I think that you're talking about, which is there's probably a collective spirit of, hey, we're in this together and we're in proximity to this other thing, but we're all kind of hustling for the same outcome, which is to have a really good conversation, to meet somebody new that's either going to help us advance our business or provide a different perspective, and or just to create connections. So remind me, had you been to this event before?
No, this was my first time at JPM. So definitely a learning experience for me,
Yeah,
figuring out the conference, figuring out, well, not even the conference, figuring out the world outside of the
yeah.
conference, but yeah, how to make the most of it. Yeah, I'm still figuring that out a little bit, but definitely learned some things.
So I'm curious, when you and your two founders are sitting together, let's say in December, and you're thinking about 2025, how did the conversation go? Like, was it, oh yeah, I need to be there? Or were there some things that kind of cropped up and say, hey, this is what, as a founder, this is why I think it's important that I'm in the space. What kind of drove your decision to attend, if you will?
One thing that made it really easy for us is we have a couple of investors in San Francisco
Mm,
that are heavy in the biotech scene. And so they had a couple of events at the conference. And that for me is always an easy way to make a decision about a conference is like if I have one core event or dinner or
yeah.
something sort of like build around, then that makes it a really easy yes. And so for us that helped. And then we're, as you know, in the clinical trials world, we're in the biotech scene. And I'd never been to JPM, like I said, but knowing and hearing that it was a heavy biotech part of for the world, that also played a huge role for us, is just getting to go out and meet other founders in the space, other investors, potential customers in other biotech companies, et cetera. So yeah, it was really that like anchor event with our core investor and then sort of building everything around that.
So that makes a ton of sense, given that this was your first time. And I took from your comment that this is a different experience than, to your point, going to health or Vive or HIMSS, or I hate to call those traditional conferences, but more vendor, customer, kind of sell to, connect to type of conferences. Anything surprise you? What was remarkable or different than what you expected?
Yeah, it felt like you have to do a lot more legwork up front. You
Yeah.
definitely have to go make sure you're setting your meetings, reaching out to everyone and asking if they're going to be at JPM. And one thing we learned this year was a lot of people, especially those like upper stratosphere that are actually attending the event, have their calendar for JPM set a month in advance.
Wow.
We
Yeah.
definitely learned we need to start even earlier than we did this year, because we did start in the early December starting to plan for it. But it's a conference that you have to do a lot of legwork for in advance to set those kind of early meetings. At the same time, I think once you get in and like if you have an event or two in the first day, it also really opened up. Like people
Mm,
much more in a very because of that sort of like 90% that weren't invited to the actual event. It feels like everybody else is much more open to like sharing what they've got going on, pulling you into events. And so actually, one of the events for us that really opened things up was Pulsinelli is our legal provider.
okay. Yeah.
They had a big dinner on Monday night, which was the first night of the conference. And that was a huge dinner for us because we got to meet a ton of people, but that also many people pulled up their calendars on their phone and they're like, oh, will you do that? Are you going to this event on Tuesday?
Wow.
Oh, let me get you pulled in. And so it requires a lot of legwork, but there's also like a much more open sense of collaboration I felt there than I have at other conferences, you know?
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And I mean, talk about an unlock to go to an event and then have people help you calendar things that you may or may not have known about that then become just probably a wonderful impact opportunity. And shout out to Pusinelli.
Yeah.
I forget if they're headquartered out of Kansas City, but are
Yeah.
they? Yeah.
I,
So
oh, yeah.
yeah,
Well, it's great to be at an event in San Francisco and be meeting all these people
that's
that I
right.
in Kansas City, but in San Francisco. Yeah.
Yeah, and they have a phenomenal building in the plaza in Kansas City. So if you haven't been there, especially for those in the audience that are in the KC Metro, make sure to sign up for one of the Digital Health KC events because they often have their 201 events there at Pusinelli. And then you can go out and then over to JJ's for a drink or for dinner. It's a wonderful combination. So as you were there, I can only imagine kind of the energy that was in the city with all of these people in this space in healthcare, whether it was on the clinical trial side, on the digital health side, on the big health system side, what have you. Any buzz, like any kind of things just jump out to you, either announcements or things that were people talking about that you're like, oh man, that's really cool.
Yeah. I mean, my experience was very slanted to the biotech life sciences side of the world. I do think that's the predominant space. I was pretty surprised by how heavy that was. Though still plenty of opportunity. I was at multiple events where, health tech on the provider payer side of the world was very present,
Mm-hmm.
investors very interested in it, et cetera. But I was definitely I was spending my time more on the life sciences side of things. Yeah, just blown away by the quality of other founders that I was bumping into. Obviously, AI is
Yeah.
everywhere, but this felt like versus other situations where it's just talked about a lot. I met a lot of people legitimately applying it in really cool ways in healthcare. If I had a dollar for every machine learning based, small molecule biotech startup that I talked to, I would have funded our next round for trialing.
Which would have been a benefit of going just in and of itself. That's right.
100%. Well, it was really impressive, and I think it made me feel, to your point earlier, the companies in our world that are going to win are going to be the ones that are willing to go out and partner and work with other groups. Like it's just going to be a scaffolding of different people building really cool things that helps elevate things, and so. I think I've seen that a lot from a lot of people,
Yeah.
at post JPM as, you know, those who partner are going to win here. And I felt that there, and it felt like a lot of that in the air there, a lot of people really interested in chatting. It was the first conference I've been to where I actually didn't, you always run into this at the conference where you're like, there's 5 people standing next to each other and someone's got to go break the ice and say,
Yeah.
hey, and so you got to force yourself to do it. I just never felt that there. People were constantly like looking to talk to you and looking to collaborate.
Well, as an outsider looking in, but yeah, as I said earlier, I haven't had the chance of going to this as of yet. Next year is always the year. But some of the things that I saw coming into the conference, which I think speaks to both the energy and some of the momentum in the space, in 2024, there were 497 investments or deals done in the digital health space, kind of writ large, about $10 billion. Certainly not at the high point that we saw in 2020 or 2021, but a nice uptick as you're coming out of 23 into 24. And I think there's a lot of expectations for 2025 in terms of how funding is going to continue to flow into companies like Triley and to other companies. Certainly some big announcements going into JPM. Innovator raised about 275. Not sure what you're going to spend 275 million on, but I'm sure they have plans and designs. Another company in the voice space, Hippocratic, raised 141. Andreessen announced a $500 million fund for healthcare and healthcare AI. And then there were some pots and pans, if you will, in the 30 million range. That's a really nice pot that was announced. You probably felt that energy coming around. Did you get a sense that the funding environment and the engagement, especially on the investor side, is picking up in this space?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And we're definitely, we were on the lower end of the investment conversation, but, and we're not actively raising, but it's always great to network and meet folks
Yeah,
in the future. Yeah, absolutely. We did our fundraise early in 2024, finished it in the spring, and it went well, but
yeah,
there was definitely a different feel than what I felt this year or this time being at JPM. Yeah, a lot of interest. It's a great place to go to meet investors. Most of them are putting on events, so you can go and, get to meet them, get to meet their portfolio companies, really like do some deep diligence on them in like a 1 hour span at a happy hour. So yeah, absolutely. Felt that for sure. Um, yeah, felt it too, just in, like you kind of feel that in general, just being in San Francisco and seeing it,
yeah.
you're at the Union Square next to the major Marriott.
Mm,
A lot of stuff is happening and there's hundreds, if not thousands of people in suits striking deals, right? Like,
walking around. That's right.
yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, I did have another colleague of mine who was there talk about how kind of this distinction between people. You had a set of people that were basically carbon copies of one another. They were all wearing the same suit. They all had the same haircut. You're like, those are the investment bankers. And then you had everybody else. I'm not sure if you kind of saw that delineation, but I could picture it in my mind, seeing that kind of group just walking through the city, and you're like, I know what they're there for. I need to go talk to some of those guys. As you think about other founders that you've talked to, people kind of in your line of work, building a company in this space, any suggestions, recommendations that you would have for them as they think forward to next year and they say, hey, maybe I should go to this? What would you say to those individuals?
Yeah, like I said, think about do the legwork in advance, really
Yeah.
start in probably November. And I think it's just asking key customer contacts, key prospects, key investors that you're interested in if you're looking to raise or future raise. Start asking them in November, are you going to be at JPM and what are your plans, Because I think for me, you just need that one anchor event, that one event that like, okay,
Mm.
hit that. I know I'm going to get something valuable out of this and it's going to be worth it. And then build around that. And then not to mention hotels are super expensive.
Yeah.
Way in advance because it makes a huge difference. Yeah.
Did you stay in a hotel, an Airbnb, VRBO, camper trailer, any one of those?
Tents on the street.
Yeah. Wow.
I stayed at a hotel. I got lucky. I had one of our investors had a like random connection that got
Oh,
us a good
nice.
deal. We got lucky, but I did look at pricing in November and it was not too bad. And then I looked late December and it was very bad.
Don't mind as we come to the end. What are you seeing for Charlie in 2025? Any kind of key highlights that you would like to tell the audience about?
Yeah. Like I said before, we're a clinical trials tech platform. We have an AI engine that helps take very specific criteria from a clinical trial protocol and then basically search through an EHR to find the people that match that.
Mm.
One of our first product is centered around recruiting for patient trial or for clinical trials. 2024 was really our first year in market. We were first year putting it out there, first year selling. We've landed and executed on several really exciting pilots. Had some great first customers that have given us a ton of feedback. So really, in my mind, 2024 was all about like getting this out there into the wild, proving it works. Getting customers that are happy with it and willing to talk about that. And really, for us, 2025 is about how do we push this out there further into the market? We've got a recruiting solution that I think is really tough to beat. It's a great solution. Customers are really happy with it. So excited to push that out into the world and really try to like actually drive growth on it. And then, of course, how do we add to that and make it even more effective at helping drive more and more patients into these trials that need them?
Well, I've certainly been following y'all's progress in 24, and it is almost hard to believe that that was the first year that y'all been in market, because it feels like that you've gotten win after win after win, which is super awesome. I think I saw y'all published a case study from one of your client engagements that looked really, really awesome. And then I've seen you post on some of the client feedback on using Triley, and just it's really, really cool to see their perspective and how much easier it's making for them to go prosecute the job that they're doing. So kudos to you and the team. Y'all are building something special.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we're working hard at
Yeah.
it. I
Yeah.
appreciate that feedback. It always feels
So
good to hear nice things.
So for this year, as we kind of bring this to a close, one, how can people get in touch with you if they've got questions about Triley, they want to better understand? And do you see opportunity to grow the people side? And if so, what type of roles do you think y'all would be looking for?
Yeah, like you said, I post far too much on LinkedIn, and so very easy to get a hold of me via LinkedIn. You can reach out through our website too. We've got a lot of ways to reach out there. My email at Triley is kyle@triley.ai. Reach out. Yeah, and then in terms of roles, we're not explicitly hiring right now, but very interested in some business development support potentially, especially folks with deep networks in, the provider side of the world would be, our folks I'm interested in talking to as we explore that. We're not necessarily directly hiring it right this moment, but very likely will be very soon. And always very interested in meeting, engineering talent, data engineering, full stack engineering, especially if you got experience in the healthcare world, but not hiring that right now, but always interested to meet folks in that space.
Well, I would encourage our listeners, keep them on your radar. Kyle, as he said, he posts on LinkedIn. I have found his posts and his commentary quite thoughtful, both in terms of how they're building Triley and then other experience and observations he's had. So give him a follow. You'll be well served for it. Well, Kyle, thank you for making the time. I know I personally enjoyed this conversation because, as I mentioned at the onset, I haven't been. I read a lot about it, but hearing a firsthand account is just super, super cool. And I know those founders in our audience are those people who are thinking about founders. They're going to take quite a bit of insight in terms of, hey, how should I do this the next time around when there's an opportunity? So
Yeah.
Thank you for the time today, Kyle. It's been a real pleasure.
You too, Doug. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. We are excited to bring new episodes out each week. We are incredibly grateful to our guests and our listeners. Let us know what you think by commenting on the episodes. The Counterweight is honored to be sponsored by The Echelon by Amy Teskey. The Echelon is intentional about building community and sharing expertise for healthcare technology sellers and leaders. The Echelon provides members curated content, education materials, and the ability to connect with peers and leaders specific to healthcare technology. Sales can be hard. It is made easier when you are part of a community that is focused on enabling you to be your best. Take an opportunity to invest in yourself. Join the Echelon, use the code Counterweight, and gain the ability to participate for the first 30 days at no cost. Thank you to Amy Teskey and the Echelon for your sponsorship. We are also proudly sponsored by the Upper Right Corner, which provides advice on strategic growth, including growth assessments and strategy, go-to-network planning, sales leadership, team coaching, and fractional leadership roles. For more, visit theupperrightcorner.com. Lastly, we are proud to be sponsored by Waypoint Healthcare Solutions. Waypoint Healthcare is a focused consulting organization helping health systems, providers, and organizations develop and implement patient engagement strategies. Waypoint HCS provides strategic consulting and patient engagement technology guidance and selection. Waypoint also helps support implementations and ongoing program management. For more, visit Waypoint HCS's LinkedIn page or waypointhcs.com. Thank you to our guests and our listeners. As always, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Subscribe, like, and follow, and we look forward to joining you again next Wednesday for another episode of The Counterweight.